and get you talking a little bit at your table. And by all means, involve me, ask me questions, but I'll do far less of the talking this time. And then I'm going to finish up 11:15. John might close it out. And if you linger, that's on you, but we'll be well and truly done to get out there into the sunshine. Is that a good plan? Alrighty. So just to refresh, I'm really picking up some of the lessons I've learned through that 3-year experience where I talk about creating ONEteam, which was my spin on a spherical organizational model as opposed to a hierarchical one. It wasn't flat either. Like I was just going off the reservation with this, completely engineering my own language and approach, but of course using transferable principles from lots of other learned people and mashing it together to form what would work for me. And I want to talk about your team. So you're all in teams, I presume, right? You're either running your own business, you're about to start one, you are running someone else's business, you're a CEO, you're an entrepreneur, you're a senior manager, an executive. I'm just making these assumptions. That's why you're here this morning. But the thing I presume we all have in common is you at least lead or are part of a team. Is that fair? So right at the very core of team, I'm just going to draw this. I think it's easier. Right at the very core is this idea that you want to have a champion team. Fair assumption? A champion team, not a team of champions. I reckon I spent the first decade trying to build a team of champions. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to employ the best. I wanted to train them to be the best. If you were the best, I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to invite you in. I'd pay you more than everybody else if that's what it took, because I wanted champions. Who doesn't want champions? I wanted winners. I wanted people who could make stuff happen. Sounds reasonable, doesn't it? Ordinarily, it doesn't build great teams. It's a misnomer. In fact, I learnt that what I wanted more than anything was a champion team. So, not to be too cryptic about this, if you meet people who are 9s and 10s, they're often not that great at working in teams. So, pardon? Maybe, like there's lots of different reasons for it. But what I worked out was I could take a bunch of 6s and 7s and together they understood their limitations, could collaborate, wanted to work collectively, understood that they brought something of value and had contribution to make, but they didn't know everything. Oh, that's the stardust. That's the magic of what you could start to build team from. That's the raw material. So my first quick principle, I'm just going to give you 2 or 3 real quick ones, and then you're going to talk about it. But my first real quick one here is, let's start with a champion team. Not pursue a team of champions. John could give you football story after football story. Let's go all the way back to Gary Ablett Sr., right? Champion player, not a champion team player. Could win the goal, but he broke all the coach's rules to win the game, right? Could kick the goal to win the game, but alienated team, right? So let's make sure we understand the distinction. Next thing I want you to think about here is this idea of, and we're just going to build a model on this, overlead and undermanage. You know, the biggest criticism you hear all the time is you're micro and you get into the detail and you don't just let me have a go. It's this whole sentiment that micromanagement is bad, and I don't think micromanagement is always that bad. But what I do think is a critical failure is we don't overlead. We don't overlead. We substitute poor leadership with over management. And my best distinction between the two, leadership is about setting direction, gaining commitment, facilitating change so that others can achieve results. And management is just the efficient deployment of resources in an organized way, right? Both really important. So I'm not villainizing management, but my challenge to you today, overlead. How are you going to overlead so that you actually rarely have to manage? Because if you want to grow your business, if you want to build team, and we go back to that idea that you need to decrease for them to increase, you need to manage less, you need to lead more to enable them to do. And the third, before we sit and talk about this, and I'll lead you in some discussion, the third real quick one is whether you have a culture commitment. I'm a health professional. I don't know how to write. Apologies for my writing. But do you have a culture commitment? Just about all of you would have a values statement. You'd have some sort of, published, agreed set of expectations or standards in the workplace, all of which I say, good, that's helpful. But do you have a commitment from your people to culture? And, culture is what they say. It's this unwritten ground rule. It's just the way people behave when you're not looking, right? That's essentially, it's the way things get done around here. That's culture. And I would say to my team regularly, getting the job is the easy part. Keeping the job is the hard one. Because every day is a job interview and there's zero tolerance around certain behaviours. And if you're not an advocate for the culture that we've agreed to, then you're actually detracting from it. And this is one of the highest things we will keep our attention to. When I walked into that 3-year period of rapid growth and restructuring and dismantling of ordinary team life, I actually literally put all of my senior team in a room, there's about 20 of them, and I terminated all of their employment. And then I invited them to reapply. Probably wasn't legal. I invited them to reapply so that they could come back to work the next day because I really wanted them, but I wanted them on new terms, not new commercial terms, new cultural terms. And I said, I don't expect any of you to just agree to this. I want you to think about it. And I need all of you to apply for it. I want you to write me a letter. And I want you to tell me what your commitment is so that I can hold you to account. I can put a stake in the ground, come back to this day. When you tell me it's not fair, when you tell me it's not reasonable, I'll be saying, but you committed to it. We agreed. This is what it was going to look like. It was that important to me that we were able to reset, redefine, clarify culture and put a commitment to it that we would not violate. I'm not talking about your motherhood statements. I'm talking about behavior. How are you going to behave in this workplace? So 3 things that form the beginning of igniting change inside your team. Let's build a champion team by overleading, undermanaging, and resetting around a culture commitment. So here's my questions too. Here's my suggestion right now. And, there's 3 on a table here. If you want to spread out and join another, you can, but 3 is more than a crowd if you want to stay where you are. Pick one. Each of you, separately, individually, pick one of these attributes. The one that kind of just hooks into you the most. And think about how you are going to apply that in your business currently. What's the relevance of that thought bubble? What are you going to do differently Monday morning because of that? Like what does it provoke you to consider? I just take 2 minutes and just marinate on that idea just for a little bit, right? How is it relevant? Give some context to it so that when you're done in 2 minutes' time, you're going to quickly share across the table. Very quick, right? We're not going to go the long way around on this. Really quick, just do the debrief with those at your table, how that principle is relevant in your business now and what you might do differently about it. What actions will you take? And you might want to brainstorm it, okay? So we'll take a little bit of time before I keep layering on this. There's going to be 10 in total, so we'll do this 3 times and then you're out of your misery, right? We're done. But make the most of this, because people at your table have got some lived experiences that might give you a perspective that you desperately need. So are we all clear what we're doing? You're going to pick one, but chances are other people at your table are going to pick another of those, and you're going to get a more richer conversation than if you just did it on your own. Okay, 2 minutes, your own thoughts, write down which one, context, 3 things maybe you might do about it, and then we're going to talk and share about it, all right? So you're on the clock. Away you go. All right, I'm going to draw you back. I'm going to draw you back because there's beautiful sunshine out there and we all want to get to it. I'm not going to ask for feedback on that yet. We're just going to keep bouncing along, and you're building a little bit of a perspective for your own business. Let me give you 5 more really quick insights into how to ignite revolution in your team. Next one I want you to think about is this idea of distributed authority. That is not the same thing as delegation, but actually who are you going to let every person in your team, or what are you going to let every person in your team become the CEO of? That is, they own the decision. They don't need your permission. They don't need your counsel. They can ask for it if they need it, but all you're giving is your perspective. They make the decision. If there are people inside your team who are not decision makers at any level, then they're disempowered. So we had 700 staff, right down to the most junior receptionist who'd been on the job for only 1 month. We made her or him the CEO of something. Even if it was just you get to choose what biscuits you're going to put out on the reception table. You get to choose. You go to the florist, you choose the flowers, you decide how much you think is reasonable within this budget provision. You make some decisions because you're starting to exercise their willingness to own and be responsible around things. Distributed authority. Number 2, or actually we're up to number 5, peer accountability. Peer accountability is the holy grail of a high-performing team. That is, surely you don't have to wait for me to come in to catch you doing the wrong thing to bring correction to behaviour. Surely you don't expect me to overmanage, do you? Right? Peer accountability says, amongst the team, you all care enough about winning that you are going to hold your peers to the same standard you would expect the manager to. It's called adulting, right? We're not kids. When I send my 4 kids to grandma's, I say to them, don't wait for grandma to tell the little one off at the dinner table. You as the older brothers, you step in, you know how we behave, you know the family code. Hold each other accountable. Imagine if that happened in the workplace. You wouldn't have to manage. You would have to lead, but you wouldn't have to manage. But it requires people to take risks, to step up, because if I hold John accountable, you know what's likely to happen? Tomorrow, he's going to hold me accountable because I'm not perfect and I don't want to be in his crosshairs. But this is the risks we take amongst team. Let the best of me bring out the best of you, even when the boss isn't watching. Peer accountability. Okay, next one. The C word. It's had more buzz in the last 5 years than most other things. Collaboration, whatever that means. What does collaboration mean? I'll tell you what it means. It means no politics, no secret men's and women's business, no behind doors conversations where you blindside others for ego or one-upmanship. It's when the silos and the Chinese walls between sub-teams within the organisation start freely sharing information. It's when I help you do what I know is your job, and the best ideas win the contest every time, and we check our egos at the door. There's no secrets. There's no sabotage. This is the spirit of collaboration. And frankly, I see it very rarely, even in some of the better performing teams. Free speech. Free speech says, frankly, if you're thinking it, it's going to influence your behaviour at some point, so you might as well be given permission to speak it. Hopefully respectfully, to the right person at the right time, but there should be nothing you're not allowed to say. If you're not happy about something, if you're disappointed, if you're concerned, if you think the organisation's going in the wrong direction, if you think we've violated our values, if you think I'm a terrible leader, if you think I've made a mistake, you're thinking it. So in my team, I want to make it safe for you to speak it. I'd like to coach you on how you communicate it, but I don't want it left unsaid, because those things fester in the dark. We need a culture of free speech. There's nothing you're not allowed to say, as long as you say it constructively for the betterment of the team. Free speech. Pretty powerful principle. And then the last one before I split you into your tables again is this idea of best contribution. Best contribution says that just because you have a position description that says you have to do this and that your predecessor had always done, probably means you won't be optimized, because you're doing a static set of responsibilities that the organization needs filled. You're not necessarily being placed in a position to deliver your best. Here's the 2 criteria of best contribution. I want you to do what you're brilliant at, and I want you to do what you love. Not always, and rarely actually, the same thing. But the intersection of what you're good at and what you love doing is where I want you to spend 80% of your time. That's your best contribution to this organization, which means we need a dynamic role profile, not a static job description, which means I thought I was filling a vacancy for this. It turns out you love and are really good at that. So we're going to shapeshift to enable you to be optimized because the organization benefits. It's called best contribution. 5 more principles in the little time we have. I'm just poking the bear. We're not restructuring your whole business here. I'm just wanting you to think. Which of those 5 in orange grabs you? Take 2 minutes. Think about the context in your business right now, and 3 things you're going to do about it. And then share. Share at your table. I'll come back in 10 minutes, all right? Go for it. 5 principles. Transparency. All right? Trust and transparent. It's got to be part of the chemistry of a high-performing team. Trust in the person, trust in the brand, trust in the owner, trust in the whole experience. You violate trust. You've read the book, Speed of Trust. You violate trust, you go slow, you go backwards. And transparency. Candor. Jack Welch talks a lot about the value of candor and making sure that people have clarity over the information. Transparency is an orbiting moon of a high-performing team, okay? And so it needs to be part of the whole experience. And the last one for today, fairness. It's an understated value, frankly. You know, when my kids are unhappy about one of their siblings getting more than them, and they tell me, oh, it's not fair. And I say to them, I get on my little soapbox and I say to them, you know what? The world's not fair. And if I took all the wealth in the world and I stockpiled it and redistributed it fairly, do you realize everyone in this room would end up with a lot less? Not a lot more? So it isn't fair, but you're some of the lucky ones. And so you're in a position of privilege, both in global context, I think that's not lost on you, but in the context of team, you have more authority, more privilege, more control, more autonomy. You are in a position of power. There is something to be said for exemplifying fairness. How will you treat the little people who can't do anything for you? And to what extent that becomes a lived experience inside your team. safety. Last two. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Just do something valuable with that. Have a conversation, and then I'm going to wind it back, take a few questions, put a bow on it, and give it back to you, John. So transparency, fairness, see if you can extract something from that. That is the whirlwind tour of 10 ways you incite a leadership or growth revolution inside your team. And it's this whole idea of freedom, best summarized as, viva la liberté. Like, it's about creating freedom for your people to enjoy freedom inside the business and team to, in fact, promote growth and opportunities. And so I want you to see that in the context of what I talked about from my story. Conviction, creativity, and courage, combined with the accelerants that bring freedom into team life, make for a wonderful combination of attributes that can take you to a new place. I know some of you are trying to write that down, take a photo if you like. It's really just exactly the same information, a little bit neater, and gives you a chance to reflect on some of that. Naturally, we haven't exhausted this, right? I can spend 2 days with an exec team talking about these principles and unearthing all of the context and trying to build application. But this morning, at least, it just gives you a little insight that you can then go away and do much more with as part of your own directed learning. And just to close it out, I'm happy to take a question or two. I know that John's going to close this out in a minute. I will hang around for a little bit afterwards, although I do have to get somewhere not too long after, but very happy to take questions. There's some books there. We'll give you a lot more context. The one on the black covered book on the one on the far right essentially captures some of what I'm talking to you about in the workshop. Like I said, feel free to take one, my gift to you. If for some reason you can't afford one, that's no problem whatsoever. And you can certainly contact me at any time if you want to take this further offline. So all of that is my invitation to you. So a couple of questions to close it out before John kicks me out. Edwin, is that a question? Every day is a performance review. If I wait 3 months, 6 months, let alone a year, to sit down with my little black book of everything you've done wrong or everything I want to encourage you in, I have missed my opportunity to every day tweak and shift, promote, correct. And so every day is a performance review, and it goes back to culture commitment. I'm going to tell you right at the beginning, I'm going to find a reason to love on you every day. I'm going to try and catch you doing the right thing so you know when I'm happy. I'm also going to catch you every day doing something that I can tweak. 1% is here and there. It's normal. It's safe culture. But don't think I'm not going to be candid with you. It doesn't, but they look different. So I'll still have cycles of formality to do more than anything career planning. But I am not waiting, storing up all of my feedback for that session, because if you don't already know the end of the day where you went well and where I need you to improve, then I'm not doing a very good job with my leadership. So those more formal occasions, punctuated every 6 or 12 months, are really around the framework of professional development and career pathways and remuneration assessments, you know, the big rocks. But hey, there should be no surprises in terms of what I think and what you think, because I want two-way involvement around that. So I'm very, very hard on that. And in fact, I'll just drop this and run, don't ask me about it. But I actually favour live round table performance reviews. So John, here's your colleagues, let's talk about it. Because I'm trying to foster peer feedback. It can't be just me. I can't have the full perspective of this guy's performance. I only see little ebbs and flows of his. So I actually get colleagues to participate in it. Not the anonymous 360s that you do on a computer screen behind the curtain. I mean face to face. But that's a whole other thing. Well, I think, that's a big question with a lot of layers, but I think the simple insight there is my understanding now that you're not going to follow me no matter how much I try to convince you and how clever I am in my language and technique of persuasion. You are not going to follow me for very long unless the place I'm leading you is a place you actually want to go. So one of my number one objectives is to try to work out very quickly, where do you want to go? What's your purpose, your vision, your mission, your conviction? And then the secret sauce of leadership is not that you are following mine. I'm actually just hand-picking and selecting people who we have common conviction on, and we're going to choose to work together. It makes me look better than I am. I'm not so much a great leader as I help you work out where you want to go, and it either means we should go together or we don't, we go our separate ways. And so then followership becomes a mutual interchange. I'm leading in areas of my capacity and strength, making my best contribution, but I'm also following because you've got something to bring and we're wanting to go the same place. So that would be my simple insight in what is otherwise a hugely complex. I know I talked fast, we jammed a lot in, it was fast paced, I didn't give you a lot of workshopping time, but hopefully there's something in it for you. One big idea, really. One big idea, and it's worth it, I reckon. Can't promise you much more than that. And walking away here with conviction, creativity, and courage as your absolute default takeaway would be a good outcome, knowing that you can then lead with conviction. All right, pass it back to you, John, and then I'm happy to hang around and maybe have an offline conversation if need be.